You ever have one of those nights where everything looks perfect on the outside, but on the inside, you're barely holding it together? Yeah, this was one of those nights. The table was set, elegant, simple. Candles flickering gently, casting these soft golden halos over the wine glasses. Dinner still steaming. Music humming low in the background. One of those jazz playlists Jude swears by. Everyone laughing, my husband especially. His voice echoing louder than anyone else's. Louder than mine, that's for sure. And I remember just standing there, by the sink, cloth in one hand, wine stain on the counter, watching it all. Not part of it. Just watching. They say betrayal comes with tears, with slammed doors, with screams echoing down the hallway. But that's not how mine showed up. Mine came dressed in charm, with a fork in his hand and a smirk on his lips. My husband's friend, Mark. But this isn't about him. Not really. This story. It's about a woman who gave everything and then slowly disappeared inside her own home. It's about longing and silence and how the deepest aches don't scream. They sit quietly in the pit of your stomach, waiting for someone to ask, "Are you okay?" Only no one ever asks. Not really. Jude had this habit of inviting people over without telling me. Said it kept things fresh. But what it really did was remind me night after night how easily I could be erased. I'd cook, clean, smile, and somehow still feel like I didn't exist. And that one night, it started just like all the others, but it ended in a way I never expected. So if you're here, maybe you know what that feels like. To be needed, but not seen. To be touched, but not felt. To laugh, while secretly hoping someone would notice the crack in your voice. This isn't just a story about a dinner party. It's about what happens when the hunger for connection grows louder than your fear of judgment. And what you do when someone finally looks at you like you matter. So stay with me, because what happened next? It's the kind of thing that doesn't just change a night. It changes everything. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because the next story might just mirror your silence. I've been married to Jude for 12 years. 12 long, quiet, practiced years. We used to be fire. We used to touch without needing a reason. He used to bring me tulips, never roses, always tulips. Said roses were too obvious. Said I was the kind of woman who deserved something different. Now, he brings me guest lists, schedules, instructions like I'm the housekeeper, not the woman he once said he couldn't sleep without. Our home. It's cozy, neat, everything in its place. The throw pillows fluffed, the wine rack full, the hallway always swept. But it's cold. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin. The kind that seeps into your bones, that settles between two people like fog no one talks about. Jude, he shines in public. He laughs louder when people are watching. He touches my back lightly at dinner parties, says my wife like it's a brand name he's proud to own, but behind closed doors, he barely looks up from his phone. We haven't really talked in months. We go to bed at the same time, but live in different worlds. He's always texting, always planning, always somewhere else, even when he's sitting beside me. And me? I've learned to smile on autopilot, to keep dinners warm and my emotions lukewarm, to nod at stories I've heard 100 times and pretend I still find them funny. That night, he invited his work friends over again. Didn't ask. Just told me, like usual. Like it was part of the job description, wife, capable of entertaining, smiling, keeping her mouth shut. I didn't argue. I just cleaned the house, set the table, cooked his favorite meal, though he never thanked me for it anymore. Then they came in. 3 men. Loud, confident, talking over each other. The room filled up fast with noise and cologne. And Mark was different. New to the office, I think. Said he was divorced, but didn't say much else. He didn't speak to impress. He didn't perform. He watched. Not in a creepy way, but in that rare, unnerving way where you can feel someone seeing you. When Jude was busy opening wine, Mark looked at me. Not at my dress. Not at the food. At me. And I didn't know what to do with that. Because it had been so long. Too long. Since someone actually noticed me in a room full of people. And maybe that's where it started. Not with a touch. Not with a word. But with a look. The kind that says, I see you. And, just like that, a crack formed. Right there in the perfect evening. In the perfect home. In the perfect wife. A tiny shift I couldn't explain. And, suddenly, I didn't feel like furniture anymore. He told me over breakfast, we're having company tonight. No, would that be okay? No, do we have plans? Just a sentence tossed across the table between bites of toast and the sound of his phone buzzing. I didn't answer right away. Didn't look up. I just stirred my coffee and nodded like always. Because that's what I do. By 6 p.m., the house smelled like rosemary chicken and roasted garlic. I was still in the apron. Hair pinned back. Lipstick applied like armor. I set the table like a ritual. Silverware lined up like soldiers, candles lit, wine breathing quietly in the decanter. He got home later than planned. Didn't notice the effort. Just kissed my cheek barely and said, "Smells amazing." And then the doorbell rang. The voices came flooding in before the cold air could even settle. Laughter. Loud footsteps. 3 of them again. And then Mark. He walked in slower. Took his time. His eyes scanned the room, then stopped on me. He smiled. Not polite. Not performative. Warm. Real. Jude poured drinks. Didn't bother to introduce me. He never did, really. I was just there. A fixture. But Mark? He turned fully toward me and said, "You must be the chef behind tonight's magic." I laughed, caught off guard. Not because the line was clever, but because someone noticed the magic was mine. He didn't sit right away. Walked around the room slowly, soaking it in. Asked about the art on the wall. The family photo from 3 years ago, the one where Jude and I were still holding hands. I watched him through the corner of my eye during dinner. The way he listened when I spoke. The way he leaned in slightly subtly whenever I said something, even if it was small. The others laughed over work jokes. Jude told the story about his promotion again. I smiled through it, but inside, I was watching a different story unfold. A slow one. Quiet. Deliberate. Mark complimented the wine. Then the sauce. Then, softly, "You make it look effortless." And maybe he meant the cooking. Or maybe he meant everything else I carry. I caught his eyes once, just once, and something passed between us. Not desire. Not yet. Just understanding. Like he saw the emptiness I didn't talk about. Like he recognized the way I clutched my wine glass too tightly whenever Jude laughed too loud. We didn't touch. Didn't flirt. But the room felt different. Heavier. My stomach twisted, not from guilt, but from the realization that I hadn't felt seen in years. Not like this. Not like someone was looking at me, and not the role I play. And that scared me. Because a part of me, a part one thought had died, started to wake up. I told myself it was nothing. Just dinner. Just a guest. Just a passing compliment. But later that night, when the dishes were done and the laughter had faded, I stood in the bathroom alone, hands gripping the counter, lights too bright, face flushed in a way I hadn't seen in years. I looked at myself. Really looked. And for a second, I didn't recognize her. Not because she looked older, but because she looked alive. My cheeks were pink. Eyes wide. Like something in me had stirred, like something buried had started to stretch its limbs after a long, cold sleep. And I hated how good it felt. I splashed water on my face. Told myself I was being ridiculous. That I was reading too much into a glance. A few kind words. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about Mark. It was about the way I felt when he looked at me. The way his words wrapped around parts of me I thought no one cared to reach anymore. I dried my hands slowly and whispered, "What is wrong with you?" But the silence didn't answer. I thought about Jude. about how he used to touch me in the middle of the night, not out of need, but out of love, out of comfort. When was the last time that happened? I counted backward in my mind. Birthday? No. Anniversary? No. Before or after the miscarriage? A year, maybe more. A stretch of months so long and silent, it stopped having a shape. And suddenly, Mark's voice echoed again in my head. You make it look effortless. Not just the cooking. Everything. The smiling. The silence. The pretending. I leaned against the bathroom wall, eyes closed. Was I just lonely? Starved for attention? Or had I truly faded so far into the background that the first person who noticed me felt like a rescue? And is it really betrayal if you've already been abandoned? I walked back to the bedroom. Jude was already asleep, one arm thrown carelessly over the side of the bed. I slipped in beside him, careful not to wake him, careful not to touch. And all I could think about was how someone else's voice made me feel more real than my own husband's arms ever did. After dinner, they moved into the living room, the usual post-meal buzz, Jude in the center of it all, talking about market trends like they were gospel. I slipped into the kitchen. It's what I always do. Clear plates, rinse glasses, wipe down what's already clean, anything to stay in motion. I wasn't hiding. Not exactly. But I didn't want to sit on the edge of another conversation I didn't belong in. I was at the sink, hands wet, mind miles away, when I felt him behind me. Mark. I didn't hear him come in. Just turned, and there he was, leaning against the doorway, quiet. Not imposing. Just present. He said, "Need a hand?" I shook my head, smiled politely. But he didn't leave. He walked in slowly, picked up a towel, started drying dishes like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't speak at first. Just stood there, side by side. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. Then he said it. Softly, almost like he wasn't sure he should. You deserve to be noticed. I froze. The plate in my hand still dripping. The words cutting straight through me like glass. I wanted to scream. Or cry. Or run. Instead, I whispered, "Please don't say that again." But I didn't move. Not even an inch. Because something in me, something tired and worn down, needed to hear it again. Not from him. But from someone. He didn't say anything after that. Just kept drying the dishes slowly. Quietly. The kind of silence that wraps around you. Heavy. Safe. Dangerous. I turned to him. He looked at me like I was a question he'd already decided the answer to, but he didn't reach for me. Didn't make a move. And that made it worse. Because it left everything in my hands. It left me with choice. I could feel the pull. Not just to him, but to something I hadn't felt in years, that part of myself that still wanted, still longed, still believed someone might actually see her. I wanted to step back, say something clever, push him away with grace. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the moment hang in the air like perfume, unspoken, undeniable. And later, when they were gone, when the lights were off and the house returned to silence, I sat on the edge of my bed and whispered to the dark. It wasn't what happened that night that ruined me. It was what didn't, but almost did. It was 3 days later. The house was quiet. Jude had left early for a meeting. The kids were at school. And I was alone, folding laundry in the living room. Half distracted. Half trying to forget the way Mark's voice kept replaying in my head, like a song I didn't ask for. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. And when I opened it, there he was. Mark. His eyes softer this time. No crowd behind him. No laughter, no pretense. Just him, holding nothing but his car keys. He said he left his jacket, that he thought maybe it was still here. I told him it wasn't. I had already checked days ago. He didn't seem surprised. I could have closed the door. I should have. But I didn't. I stepped aside. He walked in, and the second the door shut behind him, everything felt too loud in the quiet. He didn't make small talk. Didn't ask how I'd been. He just stood in the center of the room, looked around, then looked at me. And the air between us, it wasn't innocent anymore. It wasn't casual. It was full. Full of the what if we'd both tried not to think about but failed. I asked him if he wanted coffee. He said no. And then he said softly, plainly, if I were him, I'd never let you go to bed feeling unloved. I didn't know what to say. I felt the sting behind my eyes before I even realized I was crying. Not sobbing, not loud, just tears. Falling without permission. Sliding down a face that had gotten too good at pretending. He didn't move closer. Didn't touch me. But something about the way he stood still. Open. Honest. It made it hard to breathe. I stepped forward. One small step. And the space between us disappeared. Not physically, but emotionally. Everything I'd buried, everything I'd denied. It was right there in the air between us. I could have reached for him. Could have closed the gap. But instead, I closed my eyes. Took a breath. And whispered, I can't. I won't. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't plead. Just looked at me, like he understood. And then he turned, opened the door, and left. No jacket. No kiss. No mess on the surface. But underneath? Underneath, everything had shattered. Because nothing happened. And yet, everything changed. Jude noticed. Not right away. But eventually. He started watching me with those half-suspicious, half-curious eyes, the kind that don't ask questions directly, but hover. He asked one night, you okay? You've been distant. I told him I was just tired. That I'd been overwhelmed with the kids, with life. With nothing I could name out loud. And then, as casually as I could, I mentioned that Mark had come by a few days ago. Said he left his jacket. I said it like it didn't matter. Like it was just an errand. A sentence. Jude shrugged. Laughed a little. He's harmless. But after that night, he started taking his phone with him when he left the room. Started locking it, even when he was just going to the bathroom. I noticed. But I didn't say anything, because suddenly we were both hiding things. Different things. But still, hiding. Mark didn't come around after that. No texts. No jokes. No jacket ever found. Just silence. And yet he was louder than ever in my head. I'd be cooking dinner, and I'd hear him. You deserve to be noticed. I'd be lying in bed beside Jude, listening to the hum of his breath, and the words would creep back in. If I were him, I couldn't sleep. Not well. Not deeply. And when I did, I'd dream of a conversation that never happened. A touch that never came. A life that never existed. And I couldn't look Jude in the eyes. Not because of what I'd done, but because of what I'd felt. Because somehow, that felt worse. He was still the same. Still kind in public. Still distracted at home. Still calling me babe when he needed something, but forgetting my birthday until the morning of. And me? I was still there. Still cooking. Still cleaning. Still nodding at stories I didn't care about. But something inside me had shifted. Something small. Something dangerous. And I couldn't undo it, no matter how still I sat. No matter how many times I told myself I hadn't crossed a line. Because the truth is, some lines don't need to be crossed for damage to be done. Some cracks form quietly. From longing. From silence. From the ache of being untouched for too long. I didn't cheat. Not with my body. Not with my hands. Not in the way people write about in divorce papers or gossip over coffee. But maybe I betrayed with my heart. Because when someone else becomes the place you go in your mind to feel seen, when their voice becomes the one that soothes your loneliness even in their absence, that's a kind of betrayal too, isn't it? I didn't want Mark. Not really. It wasn't about him. It was about what he saw in me. What he reflected back. That I was still someone. That I still had something left inside me worth noticing. I didn't want romance. I wanted recognition. I wanted to feel like I mattered. Like I wasn't just filling a role, Mom. Wife. Host. Caretaker. Silencer of needs. I wanted to feel enough. And I started asking myself questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Had I been fading all this time, and Jude just didn't notice? Or worse, did he notice? And just prefer it that way? Did my silence make his life easier? Did my emptiness give him more space to stretch out, to fill the room with his stories, his opinions, his plans? Because sometimes I think it's not that he doesn't love me. It's that he doesn't need me. Not emotionally. Not intimately. And there's something hollowing about being loved for your function, but never your soul. There were moments I'd sit beside him on the couch, our arms barely touching, and I'd wonder what would happen if I disappeared. Would he notice right away? Would he feel the air shift? Would anything in him ache? Or would the days go on the same, just a little quieter? I don't blame him. Not entirely. We both got comfortable. We both stopped reaching. But it was me who felt it first. The loneliness. The ache. The quiet unraveling of a woman who used to laugh from her belly and dance in the kitchen just because. Now I measure my worth in dinner plates and laundry loads. In whether the kids brushed their teeth. In whether Jude remembered to kiss me goodbye or just waved. And still, I can't say I regret what didn't happen. But I do grieve what almost did. Because it reminded me of everything I used to need. And everything I stopped asking for. Have you ever almost done something? Not out of lust, not out of some reckless desire, but out of longing. That slow ache. The kind that builds, quiet and unnoticed, until one day it's all you can feel. Longing to be seen. To be touched like you matter. To be asked how you're doing, and for the answer to actually mean something. Because I didn't almost betray my marriage for excitement. Or passion. Or escape. I almost betrayed it. Because I was tired of being alone in a room with someone who once said he loved me more than his own life. And now barely looks up when I walk in. So I'm asking you, have you ever found yourself at that edge? Not because you wanted something forbidden, but because you were starving for something forgotten? Tell me. In the comments, even if it hurts. Even if it's just one sentence. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. And if this story spoke to a part of you you've been trying to silence, if it mirrored something you've never been able to say aloud, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because silence doesn't mean the pain isn't real. And your story might be the next one we tell. And the next tale might just echo the one truth you've been burying all along. Some betrayals don't begin in bedrooms. They begin at dinner tables, where eye contact is lost, where laughter is shared, but not with you, where your presence becomes background noise to the life someone else is performing. I didn't leave. I didn't cheat. I stayed. I chose silence. Chose the stillness. Chose the bed that grew colder each year. But some nights, when the kids are asleep and the wine is finished and Jude's turned his back again, I wonder, did I do the right thing? Did I protect something sacred? Or did I bury something sacred inside myself just to keep the peace? And maybe, just maybe, the real question isn't what I did. It's what he didn't. He didn't see me. Didn't fight for me. Didn't ask the hard questions when I stopped laughing. Didn't notice when my light dimmed to a flicker. So here I am. Still married. Still present. But not untouched. Because not every story ends in an affair. Some end in empty beds. And fuller hearts that never forget what almost was.